Grace and peace to you on this powerful Sunday, March 15, 2026. Today is not just another day on the calendar, it is a divine moment. A prophetic appointment where heaven aligns with your purpose and God releases the next dimension of your destiny. Wherever you are watching from, I want you to prepare your heart. Quiet every distraction and position your spirit to receive what God is about to activate in your life. Because today's prayer is not ordinary. It is a prophetic declaration for supernatural advancement. There are seasons when God begins to shift things behind the scenes. Doors that once seemed locked begin to open. Opportunities that once felt distant suddenly appear within reach. And the reason is simple: heaven has already scheduled your elevation. You may have walked through trials, delays, opposition, and moments where it seemed like progress was slow, but God was never absent in the process. Every challenge was preparation. Every delay was divine alignment. Every closed door was God redirecting you toward a higher dimension of purpose. Today, we are stepping into an eyes atomic prayer for supernatural elevation. This is the moment where you stop negotiating with your limitations and begin to agree with God's promises over your life. The same God who lifted Joseph from the prison to the palace, the same God who raised David from the fields to the throne, is the God who is orchestrating your next level. Your past does not disqualify you. Your struggles do not cancel your calling. What God has spoken over your life cannot be reversed by circumstances. I want you to understand something powerful today. Elevation is not merely about position, it is about transformation. When God elevates you, He changes your mindset, your authority, and your capacity to carry greater purpose. Some of you are about to step into rooms you never imagined entering. Some of you will begin to see doors open that only God could unlock. And others will witness a sudden shift where what once required years begins to happen in months and even days. So today, as we pray this atomic prayer, enter your next level, elevation confirmed, I want you to pray with expectation. Pray with authority. Pray with the confidence that heaven is responding to every declaration you release. Because when you align your faith with the power of God's word, breakthroughs begin to manifest, barriers begin to break, and divine acceleration begins to take place. Get ready. Your next level is not a distant dream. It is a divine reality that God is confirming in this very moment. Today we pray, we declare, and we activate the supernatural elevation that God has already prepared for your life. There are moments in life when you begin to sense that something is shifting in the spiritual atmosphere around you. You may not be able to explain it fully, but deep within your spirit, there is a knowing that God is preparing to move you into something greater. What once felt stagnant begins to stir. What once felt delayed begins to accelerate. And what once looked impossible suddenly starts to look like a divine possibility. This is what happens when heaven schedules your elevation. God does not operate randomly, and He does not promote without purpose. Every season of your life is part of a divine timeline that has been carefully orchestrated by God Himself. Many people think elevation happens overnight, but in the kingdom of God, elevation is always preceded by preparation. Before God raises you up, He strengthens your character. Before He gives you influence, He develops your integrity. Before He opens doors of opportunity, He teaches you how to steward what is already in your hands. The process may feel long, the waiting may feel uncomfortable, and the journey may sometimes feel lonely, but God is never wasting your time. Every moment in the process is shaping you for the position He is preparing to release you into. Sometimes the very season that feels like a delay is actually divine training. When doors close, when opportunities disappear, and when people walk away, it can feel like life is moving backward. But in the kingdom of God, setbacks are often setups for supernatural promotion. God will allow you to walk through certain valleys so that when you arrive on the mountain, you will have the wisdom, humility, and spiritual maturity required to remain there. Elevation without preparation can destroy a person, but elevation after preparation positions you to carry the weight of the blessing that God is about to release. There are people listening today who have been asking God why certain things took longer than expected. You prayed, you believed, you worked, and yet it seemed like progress was slow. But what you did not see was God working behind the scenes, aligning circumstances, positioning the right people, and removing what could have sabotaged your destiny. God understands timing in ways that human understanding cannot fully comprehend. When heaven schedules your elevation, it happens at the exact moment when purpose, preparation, and opportunity converge. The truth is that elevation is not just about moving higher in status or position. In the kingdom of God, elevation is about stepping into greater responsibility, greater authority, and greater impact. When God elevates someone, He is not simply giving them recognition, He is entrusting them with influence that can change lives and transform environments. That is why God is intentional about the timing of promotion. He will not elevate you into a place where your character cannot sustain you, and He will not open doors that would ultimately destroy what He has called you to become. There are seasons when it feels like you are hidden, like your efforts are unseen and your work goes unnoticed. But God often develops His greatest leaders in hidden places. It is in those quiet seasons where your faith is tested, your endurance is strengthened, and your dependence on God becomes deeper than ever before. The hidden place is not a punishment, it is preparation. God uses those seasons to remove pride, to refine your motives, and to anchor your heart in His purpose rather than in human approval. When the time for elevation arrives, things begin to shift in ways that cannot be explained by human logic alone. Doors open that no person could have forced open. Opportunities appear that no amount of networking could have created. Favor begins to surround your life in ways that reveal the hand of God at work. What took years to build may suddenly accelerate in a matter of moments because God has decided that the season of preparation has reached its completion. Elevation also requires alignment. When God schedules your promotion, He begins to reposition your life so that you are standing exactly where you need to be when the opportunity arrives. Sometimes this alignment involves changes that feel uncomfortable. Certain relationships may shift, certain environments may change, and certain paths that once seemed certain may suddenly close. These moments are not signs that something is wrong. They are often signs that God is redirecting your steps toward a greater assignment. There is also a spiritual dimension to elevation that many people overlook. Promotion in the kingdom of God is connected to obedience, humility, and faithfulness. God watches how you steward the small things before He entrusts you with the greater things. He observes how you respond when no one is applauding you, when no one is recognizing your effort, and when the outcome of your obedience seems invisible. Those moments reveal the true condition of your heart, and they determine whether you are ready for the next level that God has prepared. When you understand that heaven has scheduled your elevation, it changes the way you view your current season. Instead of becoming discouraged by delays, you begin to recognize them as moments of preparation. Instead of comparing your journey with the journey of others, you begin to trust the unique timeline that God has established for your life. Instead of striving in your own strength to force opportunities to appear, you begin to walk in faith, knowing that what God has ordained cannot be prevented by human limitation. There is something powerful about living with the awareness that God is actively guiding your steps. It produces a confidence that does not depend on circumstances. It creates a peace that remains steady even when the path ahead seems uncertain. When you know that God is the one orchestrating your journey, you no longer feel the need to compete with others or prove your worth through constant striving. You begin to rest in the understanding that the same God who called you is the God who will position you exactly where you need to be. Some of the greatest moments of elevation in life occur when people least expect them. One moment you may feel like you are simply continuing in the ordinary rhythm of life, and the next moment God begins to open doors that change everything. The phone call you did not anticipate arrives. The opportunity you never imagined appears. The recognition that once seemed distant suddenly becomes reality. These moments are not coincidences. They are the manifestation of divine timing. Heaven's schedule does not always align with human expectations, but it always aligns with divine purpose. God sees the full picture of your life, including the connections, opportunities, and assignments that are waiting in your future. He knows the exact moment when your preparation will meet your purpose. And when that moment arrives, elevation begins to unfold in ways that confirm that God has been guiding your journey all along. Many people look at their past and see only mistakes, setbacks, disappointments, and seasons that feel wasted. They replay memories of failure and moments when things did not go according to plan. And slowly they begin to believe that those experiences define their future. But in the kingdom of God, the past is not designed to imprison you. It is designed to prepare you. Every challenge you faced, every obstacle you overcame, and even the moments where you thought you had lost something valuable were shaping you into the person capable of carrying what God has planned next. There is a powerful difference between seeing your past as a limitation and recognizing it as preparation. When you view your past as a limitation, it becomes a chain that holds your confidence captive. It whispers that you are not qualified, that you are not capable, and that your history disqualifies you from stepping into greater opportunities. But when you understand that your past was preparation, you begin to see every experience as part of a training process that God used to develop strength, wisdom, and resilience inside of you. Many of the lessons that shape your destiny cannot be learned in comfort. They are learned in moments of pressure, uncertainty, and challenge. When life becomes difficult, it forces you to grow in ways that convenience never could. It stretches your faith, sharpens your discernment, and strengthens your endurance. What once felt like hardship begins to reveal itself as a divine classroom where God was teaching you lessons that would become essential in the next season of your life. There were moments when doors closed unexpectedly, and you wondered why the opportunity disappeared just when you thought things were about to move forward. In those moments, it can feel confusing and discouraging. But God often closes certain doors because they would have led you into environments that were not aligned with your calling. Sometimes what looks like rejection is actually protection. God sees what you cannot see, and He understands which paths will strengthen your destiny and which ones would weaken it. There are also seasons where relationships change and people who once walked closely with you begin to move in different directions. This can feel painful, especially when those connections were meaningful. Yet even these moments can serve as preparation. God sometimes removes certain influences from your life because the next level requires a different atmosphere, a different mindset, and a different circle of support. The people who belong in your future will align with the direction that God is taking you. Your past also carries the gift of experience. Experience creates wisdom that cannot be obtained through theory alone. When you have walked through challenges, you begin to understand things with greater clarity. You develop the ability to recognize patterns, to avoid certain pitfalls, and to navigate complex situations with confidence. What once felt like a struggle becomes a source of insight that equips you to handle greater responsibility. One of the most powerful transformations occurs when you stop allowing your past to define your identity. Many people carry labels that were placed on them during difficult seasons. Labels such as failure, disappointment, or not good enough begin to shape how they see themselves. But God never defines you by the lowest moment of your life. He defines you by the purpose He placed within you before you were even aware of it. When God looks at your life, He does not focus on the mistakes. He sees the potential that is still unfolding. Every experience you have lived through has deposited something valuable inside of you. Some experiences develop patience, teaching you how to remain steady even when circumstances were unpredictable. Other experiences strengthened your faith, reminding you that God can sustain you even when resources appear limited. Some seasons built resilience, proving that you have the strength to stand even when everything around you feels unstable. It is easy to admire the success of others without realizing the journey that brought them there. What often appears to be sudden success is usually the result of years of preparation that took place behind the scenes. Long before recognition arrived, there were seasons of learning, adjusting, and growing through experiences that were not always easy. Your own journey follows a similar pattern. The moments that felt difficult were shaping your capacity to handle what is coming next. Preparation also involves the development of perspective. When you have walked through various seasons of life, you begin to see situations with deeper understanding. You become less reactive and more discerning. Instead of allowing emotions to control your decisions, you begin to evaluate circumstances with wisdom that was gained through experience. This kind of perspective becomes extremely valuable when you step into positions of greater influence and responsibility. Another powerful aspect of preparation is humility. Challenges often strip away the illusion that we can control everything through our own strength. They remind us of the importance of dependence on God and the value of remaining grounded even when opportunities begin to increase. Humility protects the blessings that God releases into your life because it keeps your heart aligned with purpose rather than pride. When you begin to view your past through the lens of preparation, something shifts within your mindset. Instead of feeling ashamed of certain seasons, you begin to appreciate the lessons they produced. Instead of wishing you could erase certain chapters of your story, you begin to understand how those chapters contributed to the strength you carry today. Your story becomes a testimony of growth rather than a record of limitation. The past also equips you with compassion. When you have experienced struggles yourself, you develop the ability to understand the challenges that others are facing. This compassion allows you to lead with empathy and to support others in ways that come from genuine understanding. The wisdom gained through your experiences becomes a source of encouragement for people who are walking through similar seasons. Every stage of preparation adds another layer of strength to your life. The obstacles you overcame built courage. The setbacks you navigated built perseverance. The lessons you learned built wisdom. All of these elements work together to prepare you for opportunities that require more than talent alone. They require character, maturity, and the ability to remain steady even when circumstances become complex. When you recognize that your past was preparation, it changes the way you approach the future. You no longer see yourself as someone who is held back by history. You begin to see yourself as someone who has been trained by experience and refined by challenges. The very things that once seemed like disadvantages become the qualities that equip you to move forward with confidence and strength. God has a remarkable way of transforming experiences that once felt painful into tools that empower your purpose. The moments that stretched your patience become the moments that developed your endurance. The seasons that tested your faith become the seasons that strengthened your spiritual foundation. Each experience becomes part of a larger story that reveals how preparation was quietly taking place even when progress seemed invisible. There are moments in life when it seems as though every door around you is closed. You try different paths, you pursue different opportunities, and yet the outcomes do not always align with your expectations. In those seasons, it can feel frustrating, even discouraging, because it appears as though progress is blocked. But there is a powerful truth that begins to reveal itself when God is preparing to move you into a new season. Doors that no human effort could open suddenly begin to unlock. Opportunities appear in ways that cannot be explained by strategy alone. This is what happens when divine doors begin to open. A divine door is different from an ordinary opportunity. An ordinary opportunity may come through human planning or personal effort, but a divine door carries the unmistakable signature of God's favor. It is the kind of opportunity that aligns perfectly with your purpose, your gifts, and the season that God has appointed for your life. When God opens a door, it creates access to places and possibilities that once seemed unreachable. It moves you from limitation into expansion, from waiting into movement, and from uncertainty into clarity. Many people spend years trying to force doors open through their own strength. They push, they strive, and they exhaust themselves attempting to create opportunities that are not yet aligned with their season. But divine doors do not respond to force, they respond to alignment. When your preparation meets God's timing, doors begin to open naturally, and what once required endless struggle begins to unfold with unexpected ease. Sometimes the process begins with small shifts that may seem insignificant at first. A new conversation leads to a connection you did not anticipate. An unexpected invitation places you in an environment that exposes you to new possibilities. A simple decision to remain faithful in a small responsibility brings you to the attention of someone who recognizes your potential. These moments may appear ordinary, but they often serve as the first signs that divine doors are beginning to open. Divine doors also come with a sense of alignment that goes beyond external opportunity. When God opens a door, there is often an internal confirmation that resonates within your spirit. You begin to feel a sense of clarity and peace about the direction that is unfolding, even when the opportunity requires courage or involves stepping into unfamiliar territory. There is a quiet confidence that God is guiding your steps. There are times when divine doors appear after seasons of waiting that seemed long and uncertain. During those waiting periods, it may feel as though nothing is happening, but God is often working behind the scenes, aligning people, resources, and circumstances so that when the door opens, everything is positioned exactly as it needs to be. The waiting season becomes a time of preparation where your character, your faith, and your readiness are strengthened. One of the most remarkable aspects of divine doors is that they often appear in ways that human logic could not predict. The opportunity may come from a direction you never considered. It may involve people you have never met before. It may arise in a moment when you are simply remaining faithful in your current assignment. God has a way of orchestrating circumstances so that when the door opens, it becomes clear that the outcome is the result of divine favor rather than human manipulation. Favor plays a powerful role in the opening of divine doors. Favor is the invisible influence that causes people to see potential in you, to support your vision, and to create opportunities that advance your purpose. It is not something that can be manufactured or demanded. Favor flows from God's hand, and when it rests upon your life, it creates pathways that would otherwise remain closed. Connections also become an important part of the process. God often uses people as instruments through which doors open. A single introduction can lead to a relationship that changes the direction of your journey. A conversation with the right person at the right moment can reveal opportunities that you had never considered. These connections are not random. They are part of the divine network that God is establishing to support your assignment. There are also moments when divine doors require courage. Opportunities that lead to growth often require stepping beyond the boundaries of comfort. When a door opens, it may invite you into responsibilities that feel larger than anything you have handled before. It may require trusting God in ways that stretch your faith and challenge your confidence. Yet within those moments is the invitation to grow into the person that your purpose requires. It is important to recognize that not every open door is a divine door. Discernment becomes essential when opportunities begin to increase. A divine door will align with your calling, your values, and the direction that God has been developing within your life. It will not require compromising your integrity or abandoning the principles that guide your faith. Instead, it will strengthen your ability to walk in purpose while maintaining the character that sustains long-term success. When divine doors open, they often create momentum that begins to carry your journey forward. One opportunity leads to another. One connection introduces you to another relationship. What once seemed distant begins to move closer with each step. The path ahead becomes clearer as you continue walking in obedience and faithfulness. Sometimes the opening of divine doors also brings transformation in how you see yourself. Opportunities reveal capacities that you may not have fully recognized before. They challenge you to expand your thinking, to develop new skills, and to grow into roles that require greater leadership and influence. The process becomes not only about external progress, but also about internal development. There are seasons when people wonder whether their efforts are making any difference, especially when results appear slow. But when divine doors begin to open, it often becomes evident that every moment of faithfulness contributed to the opportunity that is now appearing. The small acts of discipline, the quiet moments of perseverance, and the unseen hours of preparation all become part of the foundation that supports the new opportunities unfolding. Divine doors also carry the potential to impact others in meaningful ways. Opportunities that God opens are rarely limited to personal success alone. They often create platforms through which you can serve, inspire, and uplift the lives of people around you. The influence that comes through these doors becomes a channel through which purpose expands beyond individual achievement. As opportunities continue to appear, the importance of humility and gratitude becomes even more significant. Recognizing that every open door is the result of God's favor keeps your heart grounded and focused on the purpose behind the opportunity. It reminds you that the same God who opened the door is the one who will guide you as you walk through it and navigate the responsibilities that follow. Elevation does not begin with a change in position, it begins with a transformation in mindset. Long before circumstances shift, before doors open, and before opportunities appear, something must first change within the way you think. The mind is the gateway through which purpose is expressed, and if your thinking remains limited, it becomes difficult to step into the greater dimensions that God has prepared for your life. That is why every new level requires a renewed mindset, a way of thinking that aligns with possibility rather than limitation. Many people desire the next level, but they continue to think with the perspective of their previous season. They carry doubts formed by past disappointments, fears created by past failures, and insecurities that were shaped by difficult experiences. These internal barriers can become more restrictive than any external obstacle. When the mind is conditioned to expect limitation, it begins to interpret every opportunity through the lens of doubt. The result is hesitation. Hesitation delays action, and delay can cause someone to miss moments that were designed to move their life forward. A renewed mindset begins with the understanding that your identity is not defined by your past experiences or by the opinions of others. Your identity is rooted in the purpose that God has placed within you. When you begin to recognize this truth, it changes the way you view challenges, opportunities, and even yourself. Instead of seeing obstacles as confirmation that you cannot move forward, you begin to see them as situations that require faith, wisdom, and perseverance. Faith plays a central role in shifting the mindset toward a higher dimension. Faith is the ability to believe in possibilities that have not yet appeared in visible form. It allows you to step forward even when the path ahead is not fully clear. Without faith, the next level will always appear intimidating because new levels often involve unfamiliar responsibilities and greater expectations. Faith creates the confidence to move beyond what feels comfortable and into what God has prepared. The next dimension of your life also requires the development of spiritual authority. Authority is not about control or dominance. It is about alignment with God's purpose and the confidence that comes from knowing that you are walking within His assignment for your life. When you understand your spiritual authority, you no longer allow fear, doubt, or external pressure to dictate your decisions. Instead, you move forward with clarity, knowing that your steps are guided by a higher direction. A renewed mindset also changes the way you interpret difficulty. Challenges will appear in every stage of life, including seasons of elevation. However, when your thinking has shifted, you no longer interpret difficulty as a signal to retreat. Instead, you begin to see challenges as opportunities to develop greater strength and wisdom. The very situations that once caused discouragement become moments where your faith is strengthened and your resilience is refined. Another important element of shifting your mindset is learning to release the weight of comparison. In today's world, it is easy to observe the progress of others and begin measuring your journey against their achievements. Comparison creates unnecessary pressure and distracts you from the unique path that God has designed specifically for you. Your journey has its own timeline, its own assignments, and its own moments of breakthrough. When your focus shifts away from comparison, you gain the freedom to grow according to the pace that aligns with your purpose. The next dimension also requires expanding your vision. Vision determines the direction of your thoughts and actions. If your vision is small, your efforts will remain confined within limited expectations. But when your vision expands, it begins to influence how you approach opportunities and how you respond to challenges. A larger vision encourages creativity, determination, and a willingness to explore possibilities that once seemed unreachable. Expanding your mindset often involves unlearning certain beliefs that were formed in earlier seasons of life. Some beliefs were shaped by environments that did not encourage growth. Others were influenced by experiences that created fear of failure. When you begin stepping into a new dimension, those old beliefs must be replaced with perspectives that align with faith, courage, and purpose. This process requires intentional reflection and a willingness to challenge assumptions that no longer serve your growth. The words you speak to yourself also play a powerful role in shaping your mindset. Internal dialogue influences the way you approach opportunities and how you respond to pressure. When your inner conversation is filled with doubt, it weakens your confidence and limits your willingness to take action. But when your thoughts are aligned with faith and possibility, they create a foundation of strength that supports your movement toward greater opportunities. Growth in mindset is often accompanied by growth in discipline. The next level requires habits that support the responsibilities that come with increased influence. Discipline in how you use your time, how you manage your energy, and how you pursue your goals becomes essential. These disciplines do not restrict your freedom. They create the structure that allows your potential to develop fully. There is also a deeper level of awareness that begins to develop when your mindset shifts. You start recognizing opportunities that you may have previously overlooked. Situations that once seemed ordinary begin to reveal hidden possibilities. Conversations become gateways to new connections, and small moments of faithfulness begin to lead toward larger outcomes. Your perspective becomes more attentive to the ways in which God is guiding your journey. The next dimension of life often requires courage to step beyond familiar environments. Familiarity can feel safe, but growth often occurs when you move into spaces that challenge your current abilities. A renewed mindset allows you to approach these moments with curiosity and confidence rather than fear. You begin to see new environments not as threats, but as opportunities for development and expansion. When your mindset begins to align with elevation, your actions naturally begin to reflect that transformation. You approach responsibilities with greater intention. You pursue opportunities with greater confidence. You develop the habit of thinking beyond immediate limitations and considering the larger purpose that your life is meant to fulfill. Your perspective toward failure also begins to change. Instead of interpreting failure as proof that you should stop, you begin to see it as feedback that guides your next decision. Every attempt provides insight, and every challenge reveals areas where growth is possible. This mindset allows you to remain persistent even when the path forward requires adjustment and learning. Spiritual growth also deepens as your mindset expands. Prayer becomes more than a request for help. It becomes a place of alignment where your thoughts, intentions, and vision are shaped by God's wisdom. The more your thinking aligns with divine purpose, the more clarity you gain about the direction of your journey. When the mind begins to embrace the possibilities that God has placed before you, fear gradually loses its influence. Confidence begins to replace hesitation, and purpose begins to guide your decisions with greater clarity. The transformation of mindset becomes the foundation upon which the next level of your life is built. There are moments in life when it feels as though invisible barriers are standing between you and the future you believe God has prepared for you. You may have the vision, the desire, and even the preparation, yet something seems to resist your progress. These barriers are not always physical or obvious. Sometimes they exist in the form of fear, doubt, discouragement, or spiritual resistance that quietly attempts to slow the momentum of your purpose. This is where the power of prayer becomes essential, because prayer has the ability to break limitations that human effort alone cannot overcome. Prayer is not merely a ritual or a routine spiritual activity. It is a powerful act of alignment between your spirit and the authority of God. When you pray with faith and conviction, you are not simply speaking words into the air. You are activating spiritual authority that shifts the atmosphere around your life. You are inviting divine power to intervene in situations that may seem immovable from a human perspective. Prayer creates a pathway through which God's influence enters the circumstances that surround you. Many people underestimate the impact that consistent prayer can have on the trajectory of their lives. They may pray occasionally when they feel overwhelmed or when they are facing a crisis, but they do not always recognize that prayer can be a strategic force that shapes their future. When prayer becomes intentional and persistent, it begins to dismantle barriers that once appeared permanent. Obstacles that once blocked your progress begin to lose their power as the spiritual atmosphere around your life shifts. One of the most powerful aspects of prayer is its ability to confront internal limitations. Sometimes the barriers that prevent growth are not external challenges, but internal struggles. Doubt can quietly whisper that your vision is too large. Fear can suggest that stepping forward will lead to disappointment. Past failures can create hesitation that weakens your confidence. Through prayer, these internal voices are confronted by the truth of God's promises, and your mindset begins to align with faith rather than fear. Prayer also has the ability to bring clarity into situations that once felt confusing. When you spend time in prayer, your thoughts begin to settle, and your perspective begins to shift. What once felt overwhelming becomes more manageable as you gain insight into how to move forward. Decisions that once seemed uncertain begin to reveal clearer paths. This clarity often emerges not through dramatic events, but through the quiet understanding that grows as you continue seeking God's guidance. Another dimension of prayer involves breaking spiritual resistance. Throughout history, people of faith have understood that some challenges require more than natural solutions. There are moments when spiritual persistence becomes necessary to overcome opposition that seeks to delay or distract you from your purpose. Prayer becomes a declaration that you will not allow those forces to determine the direction of your life. Instead, you align your faith with God's authority and declare that the barriers standing before you will not remain. Atomic prayer represents a focused and powerful form of spiritual declaration. It is intentional, bold, and filled with expectation. Instead of praying with uncertainty, atomic prayer approaches God with confidence in His power and His willingness to intervene. It recognizes that God is not distant from the challenges you face, but actively involved in guiding your journey. When you pray with this level of faith, your words carry conviction and your spirit aligns with the authority that God has entrusted to you. Prayer also strengthens perseverance. When obstacles appear repeatedly, it can become tempting to retreat or lower your expectations. But prayer renews your inner strength and reminds you that your journey is supported by divine power. It restores the courage to continue moving forward even when circumstances appear resistant. Through prayer, you are reminded that God's plans are not limited by temporary challenges or unexpected setbacks. As prayer becomes a consistent part of your life, It also transforms the way you respond to pressure. Instead of reacting with anxiety or frustration, you begin to approach challenges with calm confidence. Prayer creates space for reflection and wisdom, allowing you to respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively. This shift in response often leads to better decisions and greater stability during moments of uncertainty. Prayer also invites divine intervention in ways that human effort alone cannot accomplish. There are situations where doors need to open, where connections need to form, and where circumstances need to align in ways that are beyond your control. Prayer creates the opportunity for God to orchestrate these moments. What once seemed impossible begins to move in unexpected ways as divine influence begins to shape the environment around you. Another powerful outcome of prayer is the strengthening of spiritual awareness. As you spend time communicating with God, your sensitivity to His guidance begins to increase. You become more aware of subtle impressions, wise counsel, and opportunities that align with your purpose. This awareness allows you to move through life with greater confidence, knowing that you are not navigating your journey alone. Prayer also cultivates humility. When you recognize that breakthroughs are not solely the result of your own strength, but are supported by God's power, it creates a deeper sense of gratitude and dependence on Him. This humility protects your heart from pride and keeps your focus centered on the purpose behind your progress rather than on personal recognition. As barriers begin to break through the power of prayer, new momentum begins to develop in your life. Opportunities that once seemed distant begin to appear closer than before. Relationships that support your purpose begin to form. Resources that seemed unavailable begin to emerge at the right moment. Each step forward becomes evidence that prayer is actively shaping the environment around your journey. The discipline of prayer also deepens your resilience. When you know that you can bring every challenge, every concern, and every vision before God, it reduces the weight of carrying everything alone. Prayer becomes a place where burdens are lifted, where strength is renewed, and where hope is restored. It reminds you that your journey is supported by a power greater than any obstacle you may encounter. As you continue praying with faith and intention, the limitations that once defined your boundaries begin to lose their influence. The fears that once held you back begin to fade. The doubts that once weakened your confidence begin to disappear. Through consistent prayer, the path before you becomes clearer, and the barriers that once seemed immovable begin to break under the authority of God's power. There comes a moment in every season of growth when preparation must give way to action. You may have spent time learning, developing, praying, and waiting for the right opportunity, but eventually the moment arrives when you must step forward with confidence. Stepping boldly into your next level is not about having every detail perfectly understood. It is about trusting that God has already prepared the path ahead and choosing to move forward with faith. Many people sense when a new season is approaching, yet hesitation often appears at the very threshold of opportunity. The mind begins to ask questions. What if I am not ready? What if things do not work out? What if the challenges are greater than I expected? These questions can create hesitation that delays progress. Yet the truth is that every level of growth involves stepping into territory that feels unfamiliar. Boldness is not the absence of uncertainty. It is the decision to move forward despite it. Confidence in this moment comes from understanding that your journey has never been random. Every lesson you learned, every challenge you overcame, and every moment where you continued moving forward despite difficulty has been preparing you for the season you are entering now. The experiences that once felt like obstacles were actually strengthening your ability to carry the responsibilities of the next level. When you step boldly into a new season, you begin to align your actions with the promises that God has placed over your life. Declaration becomes an important part of this alignment. When you declare that your elevation is confirmed, you are not speaking empty words. You are affirming your agreement with what God has already determined for your future. Declarations reinforce your faith and remind your mind that your journey is guided by divine purpose. There is a powerful transformation that occurs when someone moves from waiting to walking in confidence. Instead of constantly questioning whether the opportunity is real, you begin to approach it with expectation. Instead of shrinking back from responsibility, you begin to embrace the growth that comes with it. This shift in posture allows you to engage fully with the opportunities that appear before you. Bold steps often begin with decisions that may seem small at first. Saying yes to a responsibility that stretches your abilities, entering a new environment that challenges your comfort zone, or pursuing an opportunity that once felt beyond your reach are all examples of bold action. These moments may appear simple on the surface, but they represent a deeper transformation within your mindset and your faith. Stepping into the next level also requires trust in God's guidance. Trust does not mean that the path will always be easy or predictable. There will be moments where you must rely on faith rather than certainty. Yet each step taken with trust strengthens your confidence that God is directing your journey. The more you move forward, the more evidence you begin to see that the opportunities appearing in your life are aligned with a greater purpose. Another important aspect of stepping boldly is releasing the fear of failure. Fear can create hesitation that prevents action, but growth always involves learning through experience. Every attempt provides insight, every challenge reveals new strength, and every moment of perseverance builds resilience. When you release the fear of failure, you create space for progress and discovery. Stepping into your next level also involves recognizing the value of courage. Courage is the willingness to pursue purpose even when the outcome is not fully visible. It is the strength to move forward when your vision is larger than your current circumstances. Courage does not eliminate challenges, but it empowers you to face them with determination and faith. Your environment may also begin to shift as you step into a new dimension of life. Opportunities can bring you into new circles of influence, new relationships, and new responsibilities. These changes are often signs that growth is taking place. As your journey expands, your ability to adapt and learn becomes increasingly important. Remaining open to growth allows you to navigate these transitions with confidence. Boldness also involves recognizing that your purpose extends beyond personal success. When God elevates someone, it often creates opportunities to influence and support others. The progress you experience becomes a platform through which encouragement, leadership, and inspiration can reach people who are walking through their own seasons of growth. Another important part of stepping boldly is maintaining focus. As opportunities increase, distractions can also appear. Remaining focused on your purpose helps ensure that your energy is directed toward what truly matters. Focus allows you to invest your time, effort, and attention into the assignments that align with the vision God has placed within your life. Faith continues to play a central role as you move forward. Each step into the unknown strengthens your trust in God's provision and guidance. The more you walk in faith, the more you begin to see how God's timing, resources, and connections align to support your journey. Moments that once felt uncertain begin to reveal themselves as part of a carefully orchestrated path. Confidence also grows through gratitude. When you acknowledge the progress that has already taken place, it strengthens your awareness that God has been guiding your life all along. Gratitude reminds you that every opportunity, every lesson, and every breakthrough has contributed to the journey that is unfolding before you as you step forward with boldness. The declaration that your elevation is confirmed becomes more than a statement. It becomes a mindset that shapes how you approach every opportunity and challenge. Instead of wondering whether you belong in the next level, you begin to walk with the understanding that your presence there is part of God's plan. Your willingness to move forward creates momentum that carries your journey into new possibilities. Each step opens the door to another opportunity. Each decision leads to new connections, and each moment of faith reveals greater clarity about the direction of your life. The path ahead continues to unfold as you walk forward with courage, confidence, and the assurance that the season of elevation has already begun. Beloved, this is Saturday, 21st February 2026, and we are stepping into a divine moment of supernatural recalibration. Today's atomic prayer is not ordinary, it is targeted, strategic, and explosive in the realm of the spirit. We are confronting delay. We are confronting disappointment. We are confronting every season that looked barren, every door that seemed closed, every opportunity that slipped through your fingers. And we are declaring with bold authority, nothing is wasted in the economy of God. There are seasons in your life that felt like detours, years that looked unproductive, relationships that drained you, efforts that seemed to yield no harvest. But I came to announce prophetically that heaven does not measure your life by human timelines. God measures by purpose. What looked like a setback was a setup. What looked like loss was divine leverage. What looked like silence was strategic construction behind the scenes. The same God who restores sight to the blind and raises what was dead is restoring time, restoring opportunities, restoring strength, restoring momentum. Some of you have been grieving lost years. You replay the decisions, you replay the delays, you replay the missed chances. But today we interrupt regret with revelation. Those years were not stolen, they were being shaped. You were being trained. You were being fortified. You were being prepared for a level of influence and impact you could not have handled before. Restoration is not God giving you back the past exactly as it was. Restoration is God redeeming the past and using it as raw material for a greater future. This is the hour of divine recompense. The Lord is not just restoring what you lost. He is upgrading what you carry. He is accelerating what was delayed. He is multiplying what was diminished. He is breathing on dormant dreams and causing them to rise again with clarity and precision. What took years to build will come together swiftly. What felt scattered will be synchronized. What felt broken will be reassembled with greater strength and sharper vision. Today's prayer is a legal decree in the spirit. We are canceling the narrative of waste. We are dismantling the lie that you are behind. We are overthrowing the accusation that it is too late. It is not too late. You are not disqualified. You are not forgotten. The hand of God has been on your life the entire time, even in the wilderness seasons, especially in the wilderness seasons. As we enter into this atomic prayer for the restoration of lost years, prepare your heart for a divine exchange. Lay down your disappointment and pick up divine design. Lay down your shame and pick up strategy. Lay down your fear and pick up faith. The God who holds eternity in his hands is stepping into your timeline today, and when he steps in, he does not come empty-handed. He comes with restoration, recompense, and undeniable evidence that nothing in your life has been wasted. Divine restoration is God's specialty. What looked lost in time is preserved in purpose. Heaven never mismanages destiny. There are moments in life when it feels as though something slipped through your fingers. Years invested, opportunities pursued, relationships nurtured, dreams carried quietly in your heart, only to watch them dissolve in what seems like disappointment. But in the divine economy, nothing is truly lost. God does not operate within the limitations of human chronology. He is not confined to calendars, deadlines, or expiration dates. When you think something has passed you by, heaven is still actively working behind the veil of what you can see. You may measure your life in segments. What you accomplished by a certain age, what you failed to do within a particular season, what doors did not open when you expected them to. Yet God measures your life by assignment and alignment. Purpose is never erased by delay. Destiny is never canceled by detours. The very thing you mourn may be the very thing God is multiplying in unseen realms. While you were interpreting silence as absence, God was orchestrating circumstances, recalibrating environments, and positioning you for a more strategic unveiling. Restoration is not merely the act of returning something that was taken. It is the supernatural process of redeeming what appeared wasted and infusing it with greater strength, clarity, and authority. When God restores, he does not simply rewind time. He redeems time. He takes fragmented experiences and integrates them into a coherent narrative of victory. He takes broken pieces and constructs a platform. He takes what you called failure and converts it into wisdom. He takes seasons of obscurity and transforms them into incubation chambers for influence. Heaven never mismanages destiny. That is a truth you must internalize when circumstances contradict your expectations. If a door closed, it was not an oversight. If a relationship ended, it was not an administrative error in the spirit. If a plan unraveled, it was not because heaven was inattentive. Divine intelligence governs your path. Even when you exercised poor judgment, even when you stepped into situations prematurely, even when you wandered outside of wisdom, God's redemptive power was already weaving your missteps into a larger tapestry. There are people who believe restoration is reserved for those who did everything right. But divine restoration flows from grace, not perfection. It is not triggered by flawless performance. It is activated by covenant and calling. Your mistakes do not intimidate God. Your delays do not surprise him. Your setbacks do not dismantle his blueprint. He knew every chapter before you ever lived a single line of it. And he already accounted for the variables. What looked like loss may have been protection. What looked like rejection may have been redirection. What looked like stagnation may have been stabilization. God will allow certain seasons to slow you down, not to punish you, but to fortify you. You may have been asking why progress seemed delayed, but perhaps acceleration would have crushed you without the character refinement that came through waiting. Restoration often follows refinement because God restores not only what you lost externally, but what you needed internally. Divine restoration also requires a shift in perception. You cannot fully embrace restoration while clinging to the narrative of victimhood. You cannot step into redeemed time while rehearsing regret. The enemy thrives on convincing you that you are behind, that you missed your moment, that your window has closed. But heaven declares that purpose does not expire. What God has ordained for your life carries a longevity that transcends human miscalculations. When God restores, He often restores in dimensions you did not anticipate. You may be expecting the exact opportunity you lost to return in the same form, but God's specialty is exceeding restoration. He upgrades what you carry. He enlarges your capacity. He expands your influence. He restores not only resources, but reputation. He restores not only finances, but favor. He restores not only relationships, but discernment. The restoration process is holistic because God is invested in your wholeness, not just your comfort. There are seasons where it feels as if time worked against you. You look at peers who seem further ahead. You compare timelines and measure milestones. But comparison distorts perspective. You do not know the full cost of another person's journey, and you cannot evaluate your destiny by someone else's pace. Divine restoration recalibrates your focus. It reminds you that your story is not in competition with another's. God's plan for you is precise, intentional, and customized. Heaven never mismanages destiny. That means nothing you endured was outside of God's capacity to redeem. Every tear you shed is recorded. Every sacrifice you made is acknowledged. Every unseen act of obedience carries weight in the spirit. You may not have seen immediate reward, but delayed manifestation does not equal divine neglect. Sometimes God withholds visible results because He is cultivating invisible infrastructure. Restoration also dismantles shame. Many people struggle to believe in divine restoration because they associate loss with personal failure. They internalize the narrative that they deserve the setback or that their error permanently disqualified them. But restoration is the announcement that your identity is not defined by your lowest moment. It is defined by your divine calling. God's specialty is taking what appeared final and rewriting it as transitional. What you thought was the end was a chapter break. What you labeled as defeat was developmental training. The wilderness was not abandonment, it was preparation. The obscurity was not insignificance, it was incubation. And now the same God who sustained you quietly is ready to manifest openly what He has been constructing privately. Divine restoration requires faith to perceive what is not yet visible. It demands that you align your confession with heaven's perspective rather than your past experience. You cannot speak loss while expecting restoration. You cannot rehearse failure while anticipating increase. Your language must shift to match the promise. Your expectation must rise to meet divine intention. As you stand in this moment, you must recognize that your timeline is under divine governance. The years you thought were wasted were being woven into wisdom. The doors you thought were permanently closed were redirecting you toward alignment. The opportunities you believed were lost were being upgraded behind the scenes. Restoration is not an afterthought. It is part of the original design. God factored in your detours before you ever took them. He accounted for your delays before you experienced them. He prepared provision for seasons you did not know were coming. Divine restoration is not sentimental, it is strategic. It positions you to move forward with clarity rather than confusion. It anchors you in confidence rather than insecurity. It reestablishes momentum without erasing the lessons you learned along the way. The restored years carry compounded insight because you now move with discernment that only experience could teach. The very areas where you once felt deficient become areas of authority because you understand both the pain and the process. Heaven never mismanages destiny, and that includes yours. The evidence of restoration may not appear instantly, but the process is already in motion. What you perceive as silence may actually be synchronization. What you interpret as inactivity may be divine strategy unfolding in dimensions beyond your sight. The God who authored your beginning is still committed to your becoming, still invested in your expansion, still intentional about your impact, still attentive to every detail of your journey, still orchestrating events with precision, still aligning relationships with purpose, still arranging opportunities with timing, still redeeming what appeared irretrievable, still converting what seemed wasted into something weighty with glory. Nothing wasted, everything redeemed. Every tear, every trial, every delay becomes raw material for your next level. In the kingdom of God, waste does not exist. What you call waste, heaven calls preparation. What you label as loss, heaven identifies as leverage. There is a divine alchemy in the spirit where pain is processed into power, where pressure produces precision, where adversity manufactures authority. You may have walked through seasons that felt empty, unproductive, even humiliating. But God does not allow experiences to exist without purpose. Every tear you cried carried information. Every disappointment etched discernment into your spirit. Every betrayal sharpened your awareness. You were not merely surviving those moments, you were being shaped by them. The nights you wrestled with uncertainty were building resilience. The doors that closed were refining your direction. The silence you endured was strengthening your spiritual sensitivity. You thought you were losing time, but heaven was accumulating strength within you. Redemption is not the denial of pain, it is the transformation of pain. God does not pretend the wound did not happen. He redeems the wound by extracting wisdom from it. He redeems the delay by instilling endurance. He redeems the setback by awakening strategy. Nothing you endured was accidental, even when others acted out of malice, even when circumstances seemed chaotic, even when your own decisions contributed to the struggle. God's redemptive hand was never absent. The enemy attempts to convince you that certain seasons disqualified you. He whispers that you fell too far, waited too long, trusted the wrong people, invested in the wrong ventures. But redemption overrides accusation. Redemption announces that your story is not defined by your lowest chapter. It declares that what you walk through will not bury you but build you. It proclaims that the ashes of disappointment can become the foundation of influence. Every trial becomes raw material for your next level. Raw material is not glamorous. It is rough, unrefined, unpolished. It does not look impressive in its initial state. But in the hands of a master craftsman, raw material becomes a masterpiece. God does not waste your raw experiences. He uses them. He processes them. He integrates them into the architecture of your destiny. The struggle you thought was meaningless is becoming structural support for where you are going. There were conversations that broke your confidence, yet now you communicate with greater clarity. There were seasons of lack that humbled you, yet now you steward abundance with wisdom. There were relationships that betrayed you, yet now you discern loyalty with precision. Nothing wasted. The very areas that once felt like liabilities are becoming assets. The weakness you tried to hide is becoming testimony. The vulnerability you feared is becoming authenticity. Redemption also dismantles regret. Regret keeps you anchored to what cannot be changed. Redemption shifts your focus to what can be transformed. You cannot rewrite the past, but God can repurpose it. You cannot undo decisions, but God can redeem outcomes. You cannot retrieve lost time, but God can accelerate future momentum. The power of redemption lies in its ability to convert what appeared irreversible into something influential. Every delay becomes training. When you waited for opportunities that did not arrive, patience was being cultivated. When you prepared for platforms that never materialized, character was being fortified. When you knocked on doors that did not open, resilience was being strengthened. You thought you were standing still, but internally you were expanding. Growth was occurring beneath the surface, invisible yet undeniable. Nothing wasted means that even your hidden seasons count. The hours you studied when no one noticed. The prayers you whispered when no one heard, the sacrifices you made without applause. Heaven recorded every act of obedience. Heaven measured every unseen effort. The world may celebrate visible success, but God values faithful consistency. The quiet seasons were not empty, they were incubators of integrity. Redemption transforms identity. Instead of seeing yourself as someone who failed, you begin to see yourself as someone who learned. Instead of identifying as someone who was rejected, you recognize that you were redirected. Instead of labeling yourself as late, you understand that you were being aligned. The narrative shifts, your perspective changes. The same experience that once caused shame now produces strength. Every tear becomes a seed. Tears water the soil of your soul. They soften hardened places. They create space for compassion. They cultivate empathy. The pain you endured now equips you to understand others. The heartbreak you survived now enables you to speak with authenticity. The loneliness you experienced now deepens your capacity for connection. Nothing wasted. There are moments when it feels as if life extracted more from you than it gave. You poured out energy, time, trust, and resources, and it seemed as though the return was minimal. But redemption ensures that what you invested will not disappear. It may not return in the same form, but it will return in multiplied impact. The love you gave will reappear as favor. The generosity you extended will manifest as provision. The integrity you maintained will open doors that talent alone could not access. Raw material for your next level often comes disguised as discomfort. Growth is rarely convenient, expansion is rarely painless, but the discomfort signals development. The friction indicates transformation. Diamonds form under pressure. Steel is strengthened in fire. Muscles grow through resistance. Your spiritual capacity expands through challenge, nothing wasted. Redemption also involves restoration of confidence. Trials can erode your sense of worth. Delays can make you question your calling. Failures can distort your self-perception. But when God redeems a season, He restores not only opportunity, but identity. He reminds you who you are. He reaffirms your assignment. He reignites vision. The same experience that once caused doubt now produces determination. Every mistake becomes instruction. Instead of replaying it with condemnation, you revisit it with clarity. You see what you missed. You understand what you overlooked. You recognize patterns. Wisdom emerges from reflection. The lesson extracted from failure becomes protection in your future. Nothing wasted. Redemption does not always mean immediate comfort. Sometimes it begins with a shift in understanding. You begin to perceive purpose where you once saw only pain. You begin to see design where you once saw disorder. You begin to trust timing where you once felt urgency. The internal shift precedes the external manifestation. The delays that frustrated you were aligning circumstances beyond your awareness. The closed doors were shielding you from environments that would have diminished you. The losses were pruning processes removing what could not accompany you into your next dimension. Pruning feels like loss, but it produces fruitfulness. Reduction creates room for multiplication. Nothing wasted means that even the detours contribute to direction. You may have taken routes that seemed unnecessary. You may have wandered in confusion, but every path added texture to your story. Every encounter expanded your understanding. Every challenge strengthened your resolve. The mosaic of your life includes both bright tiles and broken fragments, yet together they form a picture of intention. Redemption declares that your life is not a collection of random events. It is a narrative under divine authorship. The chapters that felt chaotic were still under supervision. The pages that seemed torn were still being rewritten. The seasons that appeared barren were still cultivating roots. Nothing wasted, everything redeemed. Every tear transformed into testimony. Every trial converted into training. Every delay turned into development. Every disappointment reshaped into discernment. Every setback repositioned as strategy, every wound processed into wisdom, every struggle integrated into strength, every moment surrendered becoming material for elevation. Delay is not denial. What seemed postponed was being strategically prepared for greater impact. There are seasons when heaven feels silent and progress appears stalled, when you have done everything you know to do, and yet the manifestation has not arrived. In those moments, it is easy to assume that the answer is no, that the opportunity has passed, that the promise has expired. But a delay in timing is not a cancellation of destiny. God's pauses are purposeful. His timing is intentional. What you interpret as resistance may actually be refinement. Delay exposes what immediate fulfillment would have concealed. It reveals motives. It tests endurance. It strengthens faith. When something is postponed, your commitment is examined. Do you still believe when you cannot see evidence? Do you still prepare when there is no applause? Do you still stand when there is no sign of movement? Delay builds spiritual stamina. It deepens roots so that when elevation comes, you are not uprooted by the weight of it. What seemed postponed was being strategically prepared. Preparation is often hidden. Seeds germinate underground before they ever break the surface. Foundations are laid beneath structures before walls are raised. Muscles strengthen through repeated resistance before visible transformation appears. In the same way, God develops capacity before He releases influence. If the promise arrived prematurely, it might crush you instead of carry you. If the platform appeared too soon, it might expose weaknesses that time could have corrected. Delay refines character. Character sustains what charisma attracts. Without integrity, acceleration becomes dangerous. Without wisdom, opportunity becomes overwhelming. Without discipline, favor becomes fleeting. So God allows time to cultivate what applause cannot produce. He allows waiting to mature what excitement alone cannot sustain. The quiet seasons are not empty. They are instructional. They teach patience, humility, gratitude, and discernment. Many assume that speed equals blessing, but sometimes speed bypasses stability. A tree that grows too quickly without deep roots is vulnerable to storms. A structure built without adequate curing time will crack under pressure. In the same way, a life elevated without preparation will struggle under scrutiny. Delay is a safeguard. It is a buffer between desire and readiness. It is the space where internal alignment catches up with external opportunity. Delay also rearranges circumstances beyond your visibility. While you are waiting, God is aligning people, orchestrating connections, removing obstacles you did not even know existed. He is synchronizing timelines so that when the moment arrives, it carries maximum impact. What you perceive as inactivity may actually be divine coordination. The pieces are being assembled in ways you cannot yet trace. What seemed postponed may have been protection. You prayed for doors to open that would have placed you in environments not suited for your growth. You desired relationships that would have distracted you from your development. You sought opportunities that would have stretched you beyond your current capacity. Delay shielded you. It preserved you from premature exposure. It guarded your peace. It protected your potential. Delay confronts entitlement. It reminds you that destiny is not demanded but stewarded. You cannot rush what requires rhythm. You cannot force what requires formation. Waiting dismantles the illusion of control and invites trust. It shifts your dependence from circumstances to sovereignty. Instead of striving anxiously, you learn to stand confidently. Instead of manipulating outcomes, you cultivate obedience. Strategic preparation often involves pruning. Certain habits must be removed. Certain relationships must be reevaluated. Certain mindsets must be dismantled. Delay provides the time necessary for that pruning process. It creates space for introspection. It reveals blind spots. It highlights weaknesses that must be addressed before expansion occurs. Growth without pruning produces imbalance. Expansion without refinement creates instability. Delay stretches vision. When something takes longer than expected, you are forced to re-examine your understanding of purpose. You begin to ask deeper questions. You search for greater clarity. The waiting season becomes a classroom where revelation increases. Your perspective broadens. Your discernment sharpens. You begin to see beyond immediate gratification into long-term impact. What seemed like stagnation may have been incubation. Incubation is unseen but essential. It is the controlled environment where potential matures. In incubation, development is deliberate. Conditions are regulated. Timing is monitored. Nothing emerges until it is ready to survive outside the protective space. In the same way, God incubates vision. He nurtures ideas. He strengthens identity. He ensures that when you step forward, you can withstand exposure. Delay cultivates resilience. When you continue to prepare without visible reward, your commitment deepens. When you persist despite obstacles, your endurance expands. Resilience is forged in repetition. It is strengthened through perseverance. The very act of continuing builds confidence. You discover that you are capable of more than you imagined. You realize that your strength is not dependent on immediate affirmation. Strategic preparation also includes skill development. While you were waiting for the platform, you were refining your craft. While you were anticipating the opportunity, you were acquiring knowledge. While you were hoping for recognition, you were building competence. When the door finally opens, you will not enter unprepared. You will step in with mastery forged through unseen practice. Delay dismantles comparison. When you see others advancing, it can trigger insecurity. But comparison ignores customization. Your path is distinct. Your timing is unique. Your preparation is specific to your assignment. What works for another may not work for you. What unfolds quickly for someone else may require extended formation for you. Delay teaches you to trust your process without measuring it against another's progress. What seemed postponed was not forgotten. God does not misplace promises. He does not overlook prayers. He does not ignore obedience. The timeline may differ from your expectation, but the intention remains intact. The promise is preserved. The vision is sustained. The calling is secure. Delay recalibrates desire. Sometimes you think you want something, but time reveals whether it aligns with your purpose. As you wait, your desires mature. Impulsive cravings give way to intentional ambition. Shallow goals are replaced with meaningful pursuits. The waiting season clarifies priorities. It exposes distractions. It filters motives. Strategic preparation strengthens faith. Faith that has never been tested remains shallow. Faith that endures delay becomes unshakable. When you have waited and still believed, when you have prepared and still trusted, when you have stood and still hoped, your confidence in God's character deepens. You no longer rely on visible evidence alone. You anchor yourself in conviction. Delay does not erase progress, Beneath the surface, transformation is occurring. Roots are expanding, muscles are strengthening, skills are sharpening, wisdom is accumulating. Character is stabilizing, alignment is solidifying. You may not see outward change, but inward growth is undeniable. When the appointed moment arrives, the impact will be greater because of the waiting. The message will carry weight because it was refined in silence. The leadership will command respect because it was cultivated in obscurity. The influence will endure because it was grounded in integrity. What seemed postponed was being prepared with precision, being shaped with intention, being structured with care, being fortified with discipline, being aligned with purpose, being synchronized with divine timing, being elevated through patience, being secured through resilience, being strengthened through endurance, being positioned for greater impact than immediate fulfillment could have sustained. Acceleration after adversity is a divine pattern woven throughout the journey of those who refuse to surrender. There is a rhythm in the spirit where pressure precedes promotion, where testing comes before testimony, where resistance becomes the runway for rapid advancement. What feels like opposition is often preparation. What appears to be a setback is frequently the staging ground for sudden movement. God has a way of compressing years of struggle into moments of supernatural breakthrough. Adversity stretches you beyond your comfort zone. It forces you to confront limitations, to examine weaknesses, to strengthen areas that once went unnoticed. In the middle of hardship, it can feel as though progress has stalled, as though you are moving in circles instead of forward. But adversity is not aimless. It is shaping stamina. It is building endurance. It is forging resilience that cannot be manufactured in ease. When acceleration comes, it requires the capacity to sustain it, and adversity quietly builds that capacity. There are seasons when it seems like everything is moving against you. Opportunities dry up, support systems shrink, resources feel limited. You pray and the answers seem delayed. You work and the results appear minimal. In those moments, frustration can rise, doubt can whisper. But adversity is never the final chapter. It is a transitional space. It is the pressure chamber where strength is intensified. Just as muscles grow through resistance, your spiritual authority expands through challenge. Acceleration after adversity is not random. It is strategic. God does not waste pain. He leverages it. He uses the very areas where you were stretched to create momentum. The struggle that once slowed you becomes the story that propels you. The obstacle that blocked your path becomes the platform from which you speak. The valley that tested your faith becomes the foundation of your confidence. What tried to break you ends up building you. Adversity clarifies vision. When everything is comfortable, complacency can settle in, but pressure sharpens focus. It eliminates distractions. It forces you to prioritize what truly matters. In adversity, you discover what is essential and what is expendable. You learn to rely on what is solid rather than what is superficial. That clarity becomes fuel for acceleration. Once you know your purpose with certainty, you move with precision. There is also a divine exchange that occurs in adversity. Weakness is traded for wisdom. Fear is replaced with faith. Insecurity gives way to identity. The process may be uncomfortable, but the outcome is empowerment. When acceleration begins, you are not the same person who entered the storm. You carry insight that only experience could teach. You possess discernment refined by hardship. You operate with authority forged in difficulty. Supernatural breakthrough often follows seasons of persistent endurance. It is as though heaven waits for the internal alignment before releasing external movement. When your mindset shifts, when your character stabilizes, when your focus sharpens, acceleration is activated. What once required excessive effort begins to flow with unexpected ease. Doors that would not open suddenly respond. Connections that seem distant become accessible. Opportunities align in rapid succession. Acceleration after adversity can feel sudden, but it is never superficial. It is the result of deep, unseen preparation. Like a slingshot pulled backward before being released forward, the tension of adversity creates propulsion. The further the pull, the greater the launch. What felt like regression was actually positioning. What seemed like delay was generating momentum. The backward stretch was not loss, it was leverage. Adversity also exposes hidden strengths. You may not realize your endurance until it is tested. You may not recognize your courage until you face fear. You may not discover your creativity until you encounter limitation. The very constraints that seemed restrictive often awaken innovation. When resources are scarce, resourcefulness emerges. When support is limited, self-leadership develops. When comfort disappears, capacity increases. Acceleration requires readiness. Without the lessons of adversity, rapid progress could overwhelm you. Sudden success without internal stability can create imbalance. But when you have walked through trials, you develop grounding. You understand humility. You appreciate opportunity. You steward growth responsibly. Acceleration becomes sustainable because adversity cultivated discipline. There is also a restoration element in acceleration. Time that seemed lost is redeemed through increased efficiency. Efforts that once felt fruitless begin to multiply. Connections that once seemed closed circle back with greater potential. God can compress what would have taken years into months. He can amplify influence in ways that defy natural pacing. When divine acceleration activates, it transcends human calculation. Adversity refines motives. It tests why you pursue what you pursue. When applause fades and visibility decreases, you confront your true intentions. Are you driven by validation or by purpose? Are you anchored in calling or in comparison? The refining fire clarifies your foundation. When acceleration comes, it rests on authentic motivation rather than fragile ambition. Supernatural breakthrough does not erase the memory of struggle, but it reframes it. You begin to see how every challenge contributed to your development. You recognize that the closed doors redirected you toward better ones. You understand that the betrayal strengthened your discernment. You realize that the scarcity sharpened your stewardship. Nothing endured was meaningless. Acceleration after adversity also carries a responsibility. With increased momentum comes expanded influence. With greater opportunity comes heightened accountability. The lessons learned in hardship guide your decisions in abundance. You move with gratitude rather than entitlement. You operate with wisdom rather than impulse. You lead with empathy because you remember the valley. The shift from adversity to acceleration may feel abrupt, but it is built upon layers of perseverance. Each time you chose faith over fear, you were laying groundwork. Each time you continued despite discouragement, you were reinforcing structure. Each time you learned from failure instead of surrendering to it, you were strengthening foundation. When the breakthrough arrives, it stands on accumulated resilience. Acceleration is not about frantic movement. It is about focused momentum. It is not chaos. It is alignment. It is not reckless speed. It is strategic progress. What once felt heavy becomes lighter because you are stronger. What once seemed complicated becomes clearer because you are wiser. The pace increases, but so does your capacity to manage it. Adversity can either embitter or empower. The choice determines how you step into acceleration. If you carry resentment, momentum will feel unstable. If you carry gratitude, momentum will feel purposeful. The way you process hardship influences the way you handle breakthrough. Reflection transforms pain into power. When acceleration unfolds, it often surpasses expectation. The promotion exceeds the previous position. The influence expands beyond former limitation. The opportunity carries more impact than earlier attempts. It is not merely recovery. It is advancement. It is not just restoration, it is expansion. The adversity that once seemed overwhelming becomes the backdrop against which triumph is magnified. There is a divine rhythm in which adversity prepares and acceleration propels. The tension builds strength, the waiting builds endurance, the testing builds character. And when the moment aligns, movement intensifies with clarity and confidence, with purpose and precision, with resilience and readiness, with faith and fortitude, with wisdom and strength, with gratitude and grounding, with authority shaped by experience and momentum fueled by everything that once tried to stop you. Recompense and upgrade is the language of divine restoration. When God restores, he does not merely replace what was lost, he returns it with increase, influence, and authority. Restoration in its highest form is not about returning you to a previous state, but elevating you beyond it. It is not about recovering the exact same position. It is about advancing into a stronger one. What you thought you needed back, God often replaces with something greater, something refined, something fortified by experience. Recompense implies repayment. It suggests that what was taken, delayed, or diminished will not remain unaddressed. Heaven keeps record. Every injustice, every overlooked effort, every unseen sacrifice is noted. You may have felt as though your investment yielded nothing, as though your loyalty went unrewarded, as though your obedience went unnoticed. But divine recompense ensures that what was sound in integrity will be harvested in abundance. Upgrade means improvement beyond the original condition. It is enhancement. It is elevation. It is increase in capacity and quality. When God upgrades you, he does not simply restore your former opportunities. He expands your influence. He deepens your wisdom. He sharpens your discernment. He strengthens your resilience. The version of you that emerges from loss is not the same as the one who entered it. You carry insight forged through experience. You possess maturity shaped by adversity. Sometimes we ask God to give back what we lost, but He intends to give something better. The job that ended may have felt devastating, yet the opportunity that follows may align more closely with your purpose. The relationship that dissolved may have broken your heart, yet the growth that resulted may have strengthened your identity. The door that closed may have seemed final, yet the door that opens may lead to greater impact. Recompense and upgrade shifts your focus from mere recovery to expansion. Loss has a way of shrinking confidence. It can cause you to question your worth, your judgment, your calling. But when recompense begins to manifest, it restores more than material things. It restores belief, it renews courage, it reignites vision. The very areas where you felt diminished become areas of renewed authority. You begin to operate from a place of strength rather than scarcity. Divine recompense also dismantles the fear of permanent damage. Many people assume that once something is lost, the best they can hope for is partial repair. But in the kingdom of God, restoration carries multiplication. The harvest often exceeds the original seed. The influence surpasses the former reach. The wisdom outweighs the prior ignorance. Upgrade means you are not merely surviving, you are thriving at a higher level. Recompense is often tied to endurance. It follows seasons where you remained faithful despite frustration. It emerges after you chose integrity over impulse. It manifests when you continue to sow good seed even in unresponsive soil. Heaven responds to perseverance. The consistency you maintained in private becomes the catalyst for reward in public. The sacrifices you made without recognition become the foundation for visible increase. Upgrade also involves internal transformation. God will not elevate you externally without strengthening you internally. With greater influence comes greater responsibility. With expanded opportunity comes heightened accountability. The upgrade includes maturity. It includes discipline. It includes clarity of vision. You become equipped to handle what you once prayed for. Recompense restores time in ways that defy natural logic. What seemed lost for years can be recovered through accelerated progress. What appeared delayed can be advanced through strategic alignment. God can position you in environments that amplify your impact quickly. He can connect you with people who expand your reach exponentially. The upgrade may occur in a way that compresses previous delays into rapid development. There is also a refining aspect to upgrade. You cannot carry old mindsets into new dimensions. Scarcity thinking must give way to stewardship thinking. Fear must yield to faith. Insecurity must surrender to identity. The upgrade demands that you release limiting beliefs. You cannot operate at a higher level with a lower perception of yourself. Recompense includes the renewal of your perspective. Sometimes recompense arrives in forms you did not expect. It may not resemble the original loss, yet it fulfills the deeper need. You may have lost a position but gained influence. You may have lost resources but gained resilience. You may have lost recognition but gained clarity. The upgrade addresses the core of your calling rather than the surface of your circumstance. Recompense also vindicates faithfulness. It affirms that obedience was not in vain. It confirms that integrity carries reward. It demonstrates that delayed justice is not denied justice. When restoration unfolds, it becomes evidence that heaven was attentive all along. What seemed overlooked was being reserved for a greater reveal. Upgrade increases authority. When you have walked through loss and emerged stronger, your voice carries weight. Your testimony holds credibility. Your leadership commands respect. Authority is not merely granted, it is earned through endurance. The challenges you survived become credentials. The adversity you overcame becomes validation of strength. Recompense shifts your narrative from victimhood to victory. Instead of identifying as someone who was deprived, you recognize yourself as someone who was developed. Instead of focusing on what was taken, you celebrate what was gained. The story changes. The perspective expands. The emphasis moves from loss to leverage. Upgrade often stretches comfort zones. Greater influence requires greater vision. Expanded opportunity demands expanded thinking. You may feel stretched, but stretching is evidence of growth. Muscles expand under tension. Capacity increases through challenge. The upgrade is not always comfortable, but it is transformative. Recompense restores balance. It brings alignment where there was disruption. It reestablishes stability where there was instability. It reinforces confidence where there was doubt. The restoration is holistic. It touches multiple areas of life. It strengthens foundations so that future growth is sustainable. Upgrade also refines relationships. As you grow, your environment adjusts. New connections emerge that align with your expanded purpose. Old patterns fade. Your circle may change, but your vision becomes clearer. The upgrade includes relational alignment. There is gratitude embedded in recompense. When you recognize that what you received exceeds what you lost, appreciation deepens. Entitlement dissolves. Humility strengthens. You steward the increase carefully because you understand the cost of loss. You value the opportunity because you remember the absence of it. Recompense and upgrade testify to divine intentionality. They reveal that setbacks were not random. They demonstrate that delays were not permanent. They confirm that losses were not final. What was diminished becomes multiplied. What was broken becomes fortified. What was taken becomes replaced with increase, with expansion, with greater authority, with deeper wisdom, with stronger resilience, with clearer vision, with renewed confidence, with amplified influence, with heightened stewardship, with capacity that exceeds the former state and positions you beyond where you once stood. Prophetic realignment of time is the divine intervention that restores momentum and repositions you for destiny fulfillment. There are moments when life feels misaligned. When events seem out of sequence, when progress appears fragmented and delayed, you may look at your timeline and see gaps, interruptions, and detours that do not make sense. But when God steps into your timeline, He does not merely adjust circumstances, He recalibrates seasons. He has the authority to compress, to accelerate, to restore, and to synchronize what once seemed scattered. Time in human hands feels linear and restrictive. We measure it in years, months, and deadlines. We attach value to milestones and compare our progress against others. But God operates beyond chronological limitation. He sees the end from the beginning. He understands the intersections of opportunity and preparation. When prophetic realignment occurs, what felt delayed begins to align with divine order. The pieces that once seemed disconnected begin to converge. Realignment is not accidental, it is intentional. It is the act of bringing something back into proper position. When your thoughts are misaligned, your direction becomes unclear. When your priorities are misaligned, your energy is scattered. When your identity is misaligned, your confidence wavers. Prophetic realignment corrects distortion. It restores clarity. It reestablishes focus. It reminds you who you are and where you are headed. There are seasons when momentum feels lost. You begin with vision and enthusiasm, but obstacles interrupt your flow. Disappointments slow your pace. Mistakes create hesitation. Fear introduces caution. Over time, the drive that once fueled you seems diminished. But when God steps in, He restores momentum. He reignites passion. He renews strength. He reactivates purpose. What once felt stagnant begins to move again. Realignment often begins internally before it manifests externally. Your mindset shifts. Your perception changes. You begin to see opportunity where you once saw limitation. You begin to recognize possibility where you once saw impossibility. The internal recalibration sets the stage for outward transformation. Alignment within produces acceleration without. Prophetic realignment also corrects misplaced focus. Sometimes you invest time in pursuits that do not align with your calling. You chase validation instead of purpose. You pursue visibility instead of impact. Realignment redirects your energy. It refocuses your attention. It draws you back to your core assignment. What once consumed your time begins to lose its grip as clarity emerges. When God repositions you, He may shift your environment. Relationships may change. Opportunities may appear unexpectedly. Doors that once remained closed may open without resistance. Realignment brings strategic placement. It situates you in spaces that align with your capacity and calling. You may not have anticipated the shift, but it places you exactly where you need to be. Time restoration is a profound aspect of realignment. Years that seemed unproductive become foundational. Experiences that felt wasted become instructive. Lessons learned in obscurity become assets in visibility. God has the ability to redeem lost time by accelerating growth. What you struggled to accomplish over an extended period can unfold swiftly when alignment is restored. Realignment requires surrender. You cannot cling to old patterns and expect new positioning. You cannot hold on to outdated mindsets and embrace fresh momentum. Surrender creates space for recalibration. It releases control and invites divine guidance. When you yield, you allow God to rearrange what you could not organize alone. There is also a synchronization that occurs in prophetic realignment. Events begin to connect. Conversations align with opportunity. Preparation meets platform. Skills intersect with demand. It feels as though timing suddenly makes sense. The frustration of previous seasons is replaced with recognition that nothing was random. Everything contributed to this intersection. Realignment strengthens identity. It silences the confusion that comes from comparison. It dismantles the insecurity that arises from delay. It anchors you in confidence because you understand that your path is intentional. You no longer measure your life by someone else's timeline. You recognize that divine timing is precise. Momentum restored does not mean reckless speed. It means purposeful progress. It means moving with clarity rather than confusion. It means advancing with confidence rather than hesitation. The steps you take are deliberate. The decisions you make are informed. Alignment produces stability even in acceleration. Prophetic realignment also involves pruning distractions. Certain commitments may need to be released. Certain habits may need to be broken. Certain influences may need to be distanced. Pruning is not loss, it is refinement. It removes what competes with your focus. It clears space for growth. The discipline of elimination enhances the power of alignment. When God steps into your timeline, He disrupts stagnation. He interrupts cycles of repetition. He breaks patterns that kept you confined. The same situations that once recurred lose their hold. You begin to respond differently. You choose differently. You think differently. Realignment transforms behavior as well as circumstance. There is a restoration of hope in realignment. Discouragement fades as clarity increases. The weight of confusion lifts as direction solidifies. You sense purpose again. You feel anticipation rather than anxiety. The future no longer appears uncertain but promising. Alignment brings assurance. Time recalibrated also enhances stewardship. When you recognize that every moment carries value, you become intentional with your energy. You prioritize wisely. You invest strategically. You avoid unnecessary distractions. Realignment sharpens discipline. Repositioning for destiny fulfillment means stepping into spaces prepared for you. It means embracing roles that match your growth. It means accepting responsibility that aligns with your maturity. Destiny is not accidental, it is aligned. When preparation meets opportunity, fulfillment unfolds.